What's up? What's up? It's your man Sean P coming in live. This is the Sean P Experience, sitting with the Griots podcast. I got something very, very special lined up for y'all this evening. I am very, very excited about this show and this guest, man. I got to say before we get all into the nitty gritty of it. Years ago, during the pandemic, Dr. Katherine was a guest on my original Instagram show years ago, and then I was a guest on her podcast like two times. I've been a guest
Right.
on her podcast. So I love to have reoccurring guests, and I love whenever I have a history with a guest prior to this particular show. So to bring her brand new baby into life, man, I am
Wow.
just so proud and so glad for the full circle moment of this, and I'm just really, really appreciating that right now.
Yeah. Amen. Oh, it feels good to have my book down there in New Orleans.
You know, we in Louisiana loving it, man. We loving it. We loving it, right?
Oh,
So,
wow.
for those that don't know, to go to the official introduction, we have the author, speaker, editor, Dr. Katherine Hutchinson-Hayes, freelance writer and content editor. She works for the Iron Stream Media as a book coach, editor, and sensitivity reader for Sensitivity Between the Lines. She reviews board members and contributors to Inspirations, online magazine for Christian writers, and has been writing and her writing has been published in guideposts. Right, her work in art and writing is distinguished by awards, including the New York Mayor's contribution to the arts, Outstanding Resident Artist of Arizona, and the Foundations of Awards at the Blue Ridge Mountain Christians Writer Conference 2016, 2019, 2021, 2022. That's right, she's doing it. She's doing that thing. Dr. Catherine is she hosts Murder, Mystery, and Mayhem Lace with Morality, right?
Mhm.
She has authored a Christian Bible for women. That's amazing. And now she has her current publication, A Fifth of a Story, Why We Are Here Now. Thank you very, very much. Give a warm welcome to Dr. Catherine.
It's wonderful to be in this space. What an honor. Yeah, you're
Yes,
doing your thing. I really enjoy your interviews. It's amazing work you're doing. Mhm.
I really appreciate that. And coming from a fellow host, it means so much more to hear somebody say something like this. I really appreciate that, Doctor.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So before we get into the nitty gritty of it, it's always difficult with fictional books, but I never want to spoil a book. I never want to give too much. In this book, it's a lot of twists and turns to it. So can you give us a
Right.
little short elevator pitch of the book for those that are watching? A little elevator pitch of a fifth of a story.
Yeah. Yeah. So it begins when there is, well, it opens up in a country in Africa, and Brock O'Reilly, who is the protagonist in the story, he's with two of his good friends. He has the opportunity to not just have two really good friends, but to also work alongside with them as CIA officers. And so the mission goes wrong. It goes good and bad. And then they have to answer to their director when they get back to the States. And the director wants to have them shift to the FBI temporarily. That's not uncommon. Uh, but before that all happens, there's an attack, and three of them um, are in a horrible shootout at a bar, and Brock finds himself in the middle of this mess. One of his friends is fighting for his life, and he discovers that there's been a horrible breach in the highest level of security, intelligence, and security in the United States. And this is threatening not just the nation's safety, but his his life and the life of his very close friends. And then the action ensues. Most of the book takes place while he is actually protecting one of his friends' wife, her mom, and two of the children. Yeah.
So I'm always telling my audience about reading the entire book. Every episode I'm harping on read the whole book. In
Yeah.
your acknowledgement section, you mentioned your mother and father being so vital in your
Yeah.
storytelling, in your writing. Could you give us some more context to that particular part of the conversation?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. That's so unusual. No one's ever brought that up before. That is so cool. Yeah. Well, my parents instilled the love for storytelling in me as and both in their own ways. My mother habitually read us stories as children, really strongly encouraged us to read. We were constantly at the library, constantly involved in things like watching plays, dissecting them, that kind of thing. In fact, my parents didn't even want us to have a TV. We didn't have a TV because they felt that it was a distraction and they wanted us to be into our studies, into reading. That was kind of tough as a kid, but you got used to it after a while. And then my father, he was just an avid storyteller. So, and he would tell jokes and stories, and he was usually the hit at dinner parties, get-togethers at church. And he memorized a great deal of poetry. He loved poetry, and he loved a lot of classics. And so he would read. Sometimes he would read parts of these classics to us. And now when I look back at it, that was astounding because my father, he grew up in Jamaica, and he grew up in dire poverty, and he had to leave school when he was very young. I don't even believe he finished elementary school because his mom died when he was 8, and like I said, there's a lot of poverty there, and he had to go to work. So it's incredible that he was proficient in literature the way he was, and he just really pushed us and wanted so much more for us. So I owe my writing skills and my beginning to my parents, who are looking down from heaven at me, and I'm like, yeah, thank you, Mom and Dad, I appreciate you.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. So when it comes to your whole family, I mean, you are a doctor, Catherine. So
Yeah.
like as you're ascending in education and you've written multiple things and you're editing other people's work, as that's
Yeah.
happening, like how is your family taking it and responding to it? What are they saying?
Yeah. So I'm really blessed. I have an incredible immediate family. I have a husband who's incredibly supportive. He was one of the first people, he and my mom, I would say, were very supportive when I wanted to segue from education to the publishing industry. And I mean, I left a lucrative career as an administrator. My degree was supposed to take me to the superintendency, that kind of thing. And I just had this moment in my career where I was like, I want to shift. This is a dream of mine. I want to pursue it. And so I did that. And it started small, and I continued to network and build. And so now I work full time in the publishing industry. In fact, I didn't get a chance to update my bio, but in fact, now I'm working with Embolden Media Group, owned by Javon Bolden, one of few African American owned literary agencies, and I am now her production editor. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah.
Man, it's funny how life comes full circle. Dr. Wade is in the chat. She's a fellow doctor. And we was just speaking yesterday, and both of us witnessed somebody else Instagram live talking about you could have a career that's very lucrative and you're making all this money, you have all this stuff, but you could really still feel like I'm supposed to be doing something else, or you might not feel as fulfilled, or you can still
Yeah.
have these other emotions even though you are in your degree and you are in your field, but it just feel like
Yeah.
something's not right, something's missing. It takes a lot of courage to go and step out on that.
It does. And there's a lot of pushback. Well, first of all, you suffer with imposter syndrome. And I feel like authors just have that challenge regardless. We have imposter syndrome. We struggle with that all the time. But that was tough. I had to fight myself. I had to fight, just feel comparison. You're looking at your colleagues of what they're doing, former colleagues in your doctoral program, former colleagues as an administrator, and you sort of play this game in your head that, wow, maybe if I stuck it through, I could be doing this. I constantly battled wanting to go back, return to exactly what I knew, because the publishing industry was uncharted territory for me. So it was a constant battle. And, but the best thing I can say is, do not continue to do something that you don't feel called to do, no matter what your degree is. No matter how successful you've been at it, sometimes, it's just time for a shift. It's time for a change.
I want to speak to your father real fast before we transition. You spoke on him pretty much educating himself, being the man he
Yeah.
was intellectually. And I love studying history and biographies. I love those autodidact people that
Yeah.
have the ability to just collect news articles and they collect pamphlets and whatever they do. And in their
Yeah.
own way, it becomes just so scholarly and so well read. I
Yeah.
love those stories, man. So definitely salute to your father, man.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I love the research process of a book because a lot of my audience are fellow writers or they're aspiring writers. I love to focus on the research to a book. And even in fictional books, there's a lot of background to it. So this book, whenever I'm trying to sum it up and give an analogy to somebody, I'm like, TV shows like SWAT. I love the SWAT TV show. The Navy
Mm-hmm.
SEAL team, the SEAL team show. It's a lot of law enforcement, CIA, FBI, all the
Yeah.
alphabets. What was your research process like to make something
Yeah.
like when it comes to law
Yeah.
enforcement, understanding their tactics and all the
Right.
lingo? You did a lot of depth with this.
Yeah, I had to. I'm grateful that I have an in-house expert. So my husband worked for many years in the Army, and later on he worked as a contractor. But he worked in in one of the highest intelligence agencies within the military. So
Ooh, salute to his
yes,
earth.
yeah, so almost 25 years in the Army, and then another several years in the private sector, doing exactly the same thing. And so the scenarios are very realistic because they've been vetted by him. He was, in fact, my sensitivity reader for that. And then also just the jobs of the different members of the intelligence agencies. They have different roles that they play. The CIA, they're out of our country. And they're trying to prevent things that happen to us, and then the FBI is more here, stateside, things like that, and just the way that they do work together, the things that maybe they miss. I delve in a little bit. I kind of hinted at that. I talked about that a little bit about 9/11, addressing the issues in the holes in the intelligence agencies, because there were different agencies that knew that there was a possible threat, but there was not enough sharing. So even in this book, it talks about how the intelligence agencies are working on doing task force to kind of address those holes and share and try to share more and work together more to protect the United States. But Sean, lots of hours of research. In fact, I think this book is it's okay. It's a decent read. It's not too short, not too long, but it's a decent size. And the research for this book is easily double or triple this book. It was so much research just to do small things, but do them well, because I wanted people who were experts in this to feel that this was realistic. Yeah.
So again, ordained timing. I just started reading books like this about a year ago. I started
Okay.
reading what I call militaristic thrillers. What I would say.
Yeah.
I kind of Matter of fact, let's pause there. How do you categorize this book yourself? How do you categorize it?
So it can be categorized as espionage slash domestic thriller. Would be a domestic
Domestic.
thriller because
Yeah,
most of it happens inside. Yeah,
okay, so I started reading these about a year ago. So whenever
yeah,
your book came around, it's like perfect. We here. So being an
yeah,
ex-military guy myself, when I read these books, I can almost tell if a person really, really was. They're describing tactical gear in detail. They're describing sights and sounds and protocols and actions. Whereas like a person not just sitting at Starbucks writing this.
no,
Now it makes more sense that your husband been in the trenches. So okay, now it makes sense where that'll
yeah,
come from. I've always wondered like how the person did this. You know, there's just a lot of
right,
detail describing equipment and vehicles, and I'm like, just a lot of detail.
yeah, right, yeah, exactly, yeah, and not only that, but um, if people who read that know that I'm talking a lot about extremism, right, on both sides, but especially extremism when it comes to white supremacy. And so the research for this was terrifying because even though the extremist group in there has a fabricated name, it's based on a real extremist group here in the United States. And a lot of the other facts that I don't strip any of that away. They're all real organizations and real things in there. If you read it, you can the extremism and the organizations that the characters are referring to are actually real and very terrifying because they're happening in real time.
And you kind of almost lean into my next question naturally. I always say that even fictional books are based on real things. What was it? Because your previous work was, you said, the women's study Bible and devotionals and stuff. What made you pivot to come on this side of the house writing like this? What was the
Mhm.
catalyst to make a fifth of a story?
Yeah. Well, that was a dream of mine, and I was actually pushed by two people who they're mentors to me. One is Edwina Perkins. She's actually the co-director of Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference. She's actually works with the press that eventually printed this book. She has an imprint called Harambe. Her believing in me as a fiction writer, and also Cecil Murphy. Cecil Murphy has been a wonderful mentor to me and really encouraged me to pursue my fiction. Because when I started working with him, I was actually considering working on another Bible study. And he was like, let me see what else you have. So I sent him a couple of ideas and stories I had. And he was like, no, ma'am, I think you need to chase this fiction writing life. I think this is all you. And I'm really not a chick flick kind of a girl. I'm a shoot 'em up, bang bang thriller type of person. So this genre really suits me. It really does. I absolutely love it.
Well, let's play with both of those ideas real quick. Cause I wanted to ask you, like, what TV shows, movies, or books kind of gave you some of the kindling for the fire? Like, what do you watch that shoot 'em up that you like that help you spark
Yeah.
this?
Okay. I like movies like American Sniper, Eye in the Sky, um, things like that. Some of my favorite authors are like Ted Decker. I love a good old James Patterson book. Give me an old head like Sidney Sheldon, um, uh, Andrew Blakely, Toshka Lee. Uh, just a Another one is Kirsten Moglin. Um, love this book she wrote called The Reunion. Um, she's really she is really adept at the psychological thriller. So I love the psychological element to it. I have a lot of that in my book, even though it's lots of action, but a lot of it is psychological too, because fear is psychological, right?
And speaking to that psychological piece right quick, in the book, the main character, Brock, a lot of his internal dialogue you have in the book. A
Yeah.
lot of his inner thoughts, inner feelings, what he's going through, and being a military person, you have to go and do certain things. He's dealing with a lot of internal conflict as well. You show that. So, like, tell us why you chose that particular route to show his internal dialogue the way you did. Why that particular choice?
Uh, so this is unusual, right? In here, I am right. First of all, my three main characters are white guys, and I am representing Brock O'Reilly, who is a white guy. Yeah, but it was it's I think it's because I wanted to show his perspective, right? And I wanted to show his thinking as it relates to a white guy who, is pretty liberal and open, right? He's got his one of his best friends is married to a black girl. He loves her. He loves her family. Um, but he has a deep, dark secret. He has a secret about something that happened to him when he was younger. He actually lived in a neighborhood that was mostly black and Hispanic, and so that's where Brock comes from. So I wanted to show his side, and part of it was I wanted to show my versatility as an author, that I can write outside of my race, outside of my sex, So so I'm writing from the perspective of a white male, and I'm a sensitivity reader, which means I edit for voice and making sure that we're not being discriminatory, we're not being stereotypical, but it's usually white Caucasian people trying to write in an African American voice. And often it's done. I don't know if people know this, but over 90% of children's books about Black and Hispanic children are written by whites. And so I felt like, well, I can do a good job in also writing from this perspective. It's what I wanted to do, and I'm not going to let that hold me back. I was discouraged by a major agent who wanted this book early on, but she wanted me to switch the main character to be an African American woman, and I refused to do it. I wanted to tell this story.
I only met one other author ever, and she's an amazing writer, but she's a black woman. But some of
Yeah.
her books, she has predominantly white characters, and she faces a ton of backlash, a ton of resistance, and everything. We talk about this a lot in private about having the creativity and ability to write in different ways outside of what you are. It takes a
Mm-hmm.
whole lot to pull that off and do it well. So I mean, yeah, that's definitely an amazing writing feat to pull off.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's
And
from
as
a
you said,
male's
other people
perspective.
do. Mhm.
I'm sorry?
Now, as you said it,
Yeah.
other people do it all the time, and nobody says anything. But whenever we choose to do it, it's like, I can't believe you made a white
Yeah.
cast and white man on the cover of the book, and you had the book signing. Like, it's
Yes.
crazy.
Yeah. But for that story to be told the right way, it's almost like it had to be from his perspective. Now I've gone on. My next two books are the females. Actually, the lead characters are African American women, and they're characters from that book. But his story had to be told first.
Wow. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Let's slow it down a little bit. We'll get there for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Christian part, right? And writing another uh, study Bible for women and things like that. So even though this book is a shoot 'em up, bang bang, violent scenes happen, a lot of things happen. There's still a heavy Christian base to this story. A lot of things
Yeah.
that they're saying, talking about beliefs and about religion and their prayer and things like that. Tell us about still having that Christian through line in there, even though it is what it is.
Yeah. Um, I do see a question really quick. Yes, I did say Kirsten Moglen. I don't know if anybody knows her. She is amazing, phenomenal author. Yeah, so I love that you saw that. I would not I don't really promote this as a Christian book, but it is written from a Christian perspective and a Christian worldview, because I never shy away from the fact that I am a Christ follower. Uh, but I want this book to appeal to everyone. I don't have I don't have gratuitous language in it too much, because that's just not me. But it is very graphic. It can be very violent. It's not, there's some tough themes in there,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to show the tension of oh, she was on her PR team. Okay. Oh, awesome for you, Erin. She's amazing. And I wanted to show the natural tension there is, even for a believer. We struggle. We question things, especially if your heart is really soft and sensitive toward children. I worked in
Mm-hmm.
education for a long time. Things with children just get me. And so we wonder why, and when bad things happen to good people, you
Yes.
wonder why. Why is there really a God? If there's really a God, would he have let this happen? And we have these wide questions that consistently plague us. My main character is not a Christian, but he has a lot of questions, and he helps like open. He's constantly questioning and wondering, and he does see that his friend Patty Payne in the book is a believer, and he just he's enthralled with her and her faith to believe despite the hard things that happen. And so I just want to open up dialogue for people to to see how it's okay to ask God questions. It's okay to have doubts, but we don't stay there. We keep on pressing in. And I don't tie this up I don't tie the whole faith thing up with a neat bow. There are constantly questions throughout the book, and Brock is constantly like wondering, where is God? And at the end, he's leaning into his friendship with Patty, and also his boss, Dr. Harper. She's not a believer, but she's got some great advice and some great things to share with him that helps him in terms of his faith.
But you know what? I would say this is my own personal Sean P podcast. It's my own thoughts. It's not doctor's thoughts. But I think that's the real, I would say, Christianity, or the real like belief. Like, you're going to be toiling and tussling. People want to have this gun ho pie in the sky belief, where it's like you're a real human in real situations. You're
Right.
going to have questions, and your heart is going to get tested. But even the
Yeah.
main character in the book, he has a lot of choices to make that can go left or right. But he's always
Right.
going back to the right choice, the right thing. Even whenever it's uncomfortable, it's not the best thing favoring him.
Right.
His compass in the right, the moral compass in the right place at all times
Yes.
due to his beliefs.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Amen.
So
Hmm.
when it comes to outlining and plotting, look at some of
Uh-huh.
the mechanics in writing. You have a series, not just one book. It's a series. Do you have a
Hmm.
huge whiteboard at your house and like all these characters laid out and all these settings and you drawing lines? Like, give us the behind the scenes of how do you chart this out for a series?
Yeah.
Characters come, characters go. How do you plan this out for being a writer?
So I started out as a serious outliner, like a serious plotter, because that's my experience as a nonfiction writer. Even as a school principal and a teacher, I wrote columns my whole life. Continue to write, and trained as a nonfiction writer, you have to outline, you have to plot, you've got it. It's very mechanical, but so I tried that approach with fiction. I had the huge, board, and I painstakingly cut out magazine pictures that would look like my characters, and I had my story. I mean, it was a whole thing. It was a big thing, and I tried to follow this very scripted outline. But what I noticed is when I really got into writing the story, my characters were just revolting against the plot. They were things that they did not want to do. They were things that they decided they wanted to do. And then there were other main characters that were becoming larger than life. Like I was like, I did not mean for certain characters to have that much action, and they just called for their own spotlight. So I know this may sound crazy, but if you're an author, maybe you understand. So I
can't
became,
believe
yeah,
I can't believe you saying this. Like,
yeah,
I'm reading a different book last night, and I'm reading the Q&A part of the book, and the
yeah,
author talked about the characters battling with her,
right,
and certain people she had to be an antagonist became a protagonist. Certain settings she had to redo the whole setting. She
yeah,
mentioned the toll of doing that. I can't believe you saying it right now. That's interesting.
yeah, yeah. I was shocked. In fact, I was pretty shocked at who became my antagonist. I hadn't really figured it out until partway in the book, which is crazy. That's crazy. Uh, and like you said, right? Some people become, you know, positive. Like I didn't think the one of the main characters. She's like a secondary main character, Dr. Harper, who is Brock's boss. I didn't think she was going to be a good person. I was on the fence about that, but she turned out to be a good person.
I am not going to spoil the book, and I promise I never do that on my show. But I always have my notes when I'm reading. But in your book, I ask the most questions because there's
Okay.
so many turns in the book. I'm always like, well, I don't trust her. I don't
Yeah.
like him. I don't like
Right.
this person. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I see what they're doing. So she is a character where there's like a lot of question marks around this particular character.
Yeah.
I was definitely circling a lot. It's the
Yeah.
biggest who done it. Who done it? Kind of movie.
Right. You done it. Yeah.
Who done it? Yeah. Yeah. Do your characters talk to you? Some writers say the characters talk to them, and the characters live with them and walk with them. Do you experience that yourself as a fictional writer?
I did. Yes. The characters would wake me up at night. Sometimes they wouldn't let me sleep. There would be a maybe something I wrote, and the character would be like, "That's not really me," and I would have to sometimes I
Hmm.
would get up at night and fix that, and just and I'd be sitting in a restaurant sometimes, and I would say to my family, Brock would really love this meal, or this is something that Patty would like, and they were like, "Please don't tell me this is one of your book characters." But that's how much I began to really know them, and so I could actually I felt like they were people that I knew very personally.
So let's go a little spiritual with this, if we may. We're just talking, right? Like, talk about the spirituality of that. Like, what do you think about that? Whenever all of these writers, and not just you, a plethora of writers talking about these characters, talking to them and waking them up, and
Yeah,
what do you think? What do you think that is? What you think about
yeah.
that kind of a concept?
I think that is when you've turned on the faucet of creativity, that you've just allowed the walls to come down, and you've allowed yourself to be open and to know that creativity is spiritual, and it's God's way of creating you to be unique and set apart from everybody else. So you could tell the same story, but your way of telling it is so unique and so niche that the world still needs to hear it. So that's the beauty of the storyteller.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you wrote the book. It goes to press. It's been out for a little bit. Do those characters still walk with you, or is it kind of like the book is done, so the characters kind of go in the closet, close the door? Like, what's the like? Does it still happen?
Uh, no, I miss when I finished the book and finished, all the thing. And first of all, traditional publishing is a whole thing, right? Because the publishing house had picked the book up a whole year before it even went to press, right? So that was like a 2-year old ordeal. A blessed one, but it's a long process. I missed the characters a lot. I would tell my family, "Oh my gosh, I really miss hanging out with these characters. I want to know what they're up to, what are they doing. I think about them all the time. And I eventually decided, okay, I'm going to start writing about them because I really want to know. And I picked up right where this book left off, and I wrote about 5 chapters. And my mentor was like, I don't think, he goes, this is great, but I don't feel like this is what you really want to say. I feel like there's something else that you want to say. And I was like, yeah, he's right. It's Patty who really wants the next book. She's been crying out to me the whole time. And as soon as I started writing that, he was like, yes, this is it. He goes, maybe you can pick that up later, but he's like, this is the book you're supposed to be writing now. And that was a wonderful process because it was so much of me in that particular book. Like, I can identify with the things that she deals with, right? As an African American female in leadership, dealing with an industry that's male oriented, and even her being in 2 different worlds, because her cover is that she's a school teacher, but really she's an FBI agent. So even her being in 2 different worlds, I just love that about her. Lots of layers to her.
Yes, yes. So you're so intimate with your characters. Is it difficult when a character has to die? Is it hard to kill off a character?
Yes,
I've heard that before.
that is really difficult. In fact, some of the characters I kill them, then I brought them back to life, and so. Or you thought they died, and I was like, they can't die. I need that we need to hear their voice. So that is difficult, yeah. Especially in the second book, there were some characters that I really hated to kill. But in this book, there's actually one of the villains in there. He was such a cool, creepy guy, and so smart. I hated to kill him, but he get to take one for the team.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna say. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. He was cool though. He was cool and intriguing. I didn't want to see him go either. Right.
No.
I didn't want to see him go. Because my main thing with any movie, TV show, or book, the villain really drives the story.
Right.
It's only as good as the bad guy.
Yeah.
So some of these TV shows, they kill off the bad guy, and I'm like, where they going with this now? Like,
Right. Yeah.
you need that guy.
Yeah. And I really loved. There was a ton of things that I loved about my villain. In fact, I would say to my husband or my kids, I'd be like, there's so many good things about him. I wonder if his heart could be changed. Like he's doing so many raggedy things. Like, can he be changed? No, he was.
So
Yeah, he's destined to die.
let's talk about some of these fight scenes, right? I love asking my fictional writers about fight scenes because I think they're very difficult to craft and pull off on paper. Some of
Yeah.
the details in the fight. So I gotta ask, how did you go about crafting these fight scenes? Like, were you actually like doing stuff?
Yeah.
Did it require you to literally physically train yourself,
Yeah.
or is this totally imagination? How do you do it?
So that was a combination of thinking through actual fight scenes, going to my husband and making sure that sounded accurate, because he is trained in hand-to-hand combat and mixed martial arts. But I am a black belt in Taekwondo, and one of the things that I'm really good at in Taekwondo is sparring. I've won a lot of awards for sparring. I was on a championship team specifically for sparring. I didn't get to go to they would call it. Yeah, their Olympics because of an injury, but I was really good at sparring. So fighting to me is those kinds of scenes to me come second nature.
Now, doctor, in my time in martial arts, lifelong, not many people say a phrase like "I was really good at sparring." That's
Yeah.
rare. Some folks are real good with the drills and the skills and the forms. Not
Yeah.
many people say a sentence like, I was really good at sparring.
Yeah.
That's scary, by the way. That's scary. It's pretty
Uh-huh.
scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no,
I was, yeah, that was my jam. And in fact, they would have to stop pairing me with other females because I was killing them. So they would pair me with a lot of men, which didn't turn out well for me um, because I'm very powerful upper body with my upper body, and so when the guy, I think they would forget I was a woman. They were like, "Better kill." I was just gonna, she's high. So I got my butt whooped by.
this is why I believe in equality, right? And the guys that go around talking about a woman can't lead and a woman can't this. I don't know the kind of females they grew up around. When I was in school, I've seen plenty of females beat guys up all the time. And in my own time playing sports, some of the hardest games of my life been against female players as far as toughness. So I've never underestimated a female
Yeah.
in the ring when it's time to spar or fight. I'm taking this very seriously. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. You're right.
Uh-huh.
It gets tough in there. It gets tough. But to the writing, as a fighter, I can read somebody's fight scene. I can tell this person has never been punched in the face before in the shows.
Right.
They have never been
Exactly.
punched in the face because it wouldn't be
Yeah.
like you can read it.
Yeah. Exactly. And sparring is exhausting. Oh, it's exhausted. 1 minute of sparring, you just want to die. I mean, it's physical fighting is really tough. That's why, I mean, say what people want to say about things being, boxing being barbaric. I love boxing because I think it's an art form. I wish we would box more instead of shooting each other. That would be way better. Let's just have some good old fashioned fights.
I love those cities where they have a program called, I believe it's called Gloves Up, Guns Down. Gloves Up,
Right.
Guns Down. And they have a big old ring, and the guys get together with some gloves and everything. And yeah, y'all got beef, you go just fight it out. And it's for a
Right.
good cause and for a good purpose. People donate everything to it for the city, and it is a whole lot better than the other kind of violence.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back to spirituality once again, because in my time around martial arts, some of the higher ranked people are some of the most humble and meek and just nice. If you saw them
Yeah.
at Walmart, you would never know how dangerous they are. Like their spirit and their heart from the
Right.
process to get a black belt is really refined, I would say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The lower level people have the egos and they go around hurting people and trying to fight people. Like the real high level people don't go around looking for a fight. They don't go around, they're peaceful.
Yeah. In fact, when during your training, when you do achieve black belt, you are warned, right, that you cannot. This is for self-defense. This is self-preservation. This is not something where you're going out to take people down and show off it at all. In fact, you are held to a whole different standard. But I really thank my late brother. Unfortunately, my brother passed away during the process of writing this particular book. And he was a third-degree black belt. Yeah, we're just 18 months apart, right? But that's a whole thing. But his example as a martial arts expert really inspired me. He was a third-degree black belt when he passed away, and he was working on the next one. I think there are 5 you can get in Taekwondo, but he was definitely the strongest person in our studio. And I mean, he did incredible things. I mean, his kicks, the way his breaks, just unbelievable. One time, the last tournament he was in, he climbed on like a ladder that was as high as a basketball hoop. the basketball hoop. So he climbs on this ladder to jump off and do this flying kick in the air to kick the stack, and he got it. He nailed it. But he was definitely, somebody who was strong but was controlled. He was gentle. He was loving and nurturing outside of the studio. So that was a prime example of what it meant to have strength, but yet to also be humble and not to just use it in ways that were harmful to other people.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Salute to that. Salute to that. Let's pivot to your editing, right? I love to talk to editors that are writers.
Yeah.
So whenever you're writing your own work,
Yeah.
do you tell yourself, I'm gonna just write, I'm gonna let the editor do their job? Or do you subconsciously, like you're editing your own stuff before you even send it, you're already doing your own process? How does that work for an editor?
Yeah, so what I tell people to do is just get it out on paper and then go back. So the editor in me I do get it out. I get it out, and then I go back over it till I feel like it is really clean. And then I send it to an editor. So even though I send it to an editor after I'm done, I make sure that it is really clean. So editors have said, wow, it's so clean. So I make their job a lot easier. And that's what writers should do. And when I work with writers, I'm actually working myself out of a job a little bit, because I'm showing them what not to do, how to do this, how to do that. So they don't fall, they come away as not just someone who has an edited book, but now someone who's a stronger writer.
So, because you've been an editor, whenever you and your editor going back and forth with the notes and those processes and changes, what's that relationship like? What's that conversation like? Because you know what it is. The average person is like, oh man, all these notes coming back and all these changes and kind of resistance. But how do you take it whenever you're getting the notes back?
Yeah. So for this process, like I said before, and this is my strong advice to anyone, right? Now that I work for a freelance and I work for other publishing houses and a literary agency with agents, writers have to send in their stuff as clean as possible. They expect for you to hire a professional editor before you get them the stuff. So if you're approaching a publisher directly, or if you have an agent, your stuff needs to go through an editor before you even get it. So that's what I did. And then after that, then it gets sent off to the publishing house. And so the publishing house came back with one round of edits. I had to go through, and that was more like a developmental content edit. So I went through, and then you have a deadline. I made sure I hit my deadline. I think I had a 14-day turnaround, tried to get it in there before that. And then after that, it went to the proofreader. And so the proofreader, I'm lying. It went through a line edit. I did that. When it goes to the proofreader, you don't see it. That's it. So after the line edit, it's a wrap. So I went through 2 rounds of edits professionally.
Gotcha. And what advantage do you have as a writer with that editing mind inside of you? What's your advantage versus the average writer? You would say.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know how to format. I know formatting is important. So I know how to format professionally. I know show don't tell is like beaten into my brain. So I really try to nail showing, making sure that I have a good balance of dialogue and I have a good balance of showing versus telling, making sure that the reader is constantly engaged. And another thing I do, I read my stuff back to myself, and I also we all have it on our Microsoft where you can have your stuff read back to you, right? So that's important. I make sure that I hear that, because that is something that editors do. We're gonna read their people's stuff out loud. A lot of times I placed so I can hear it, and I'm not just looking at it.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. I'm always curious about that because Toni Morrison, of course, was the editor. Our sister Keisha Blaine is the current
Yeah,
editor and everything, and there's some amazing writers. So I'm always thinking about the advantage of being an editor like that.
yeah, yeah,
Now, you are also, as you mentioned, a podcast host. Murder, mystery, and mayhem, morality, right?
yeah.
Talking to so many authors over years, what do you think you gain as a writer from these authors? Just talk conversations and stuff. What do you think you gain from those shows?
Well, I met people like you, so I got to network in the industry, which is absolutely amazing, right? When I started that podcast, number one, I didn't know anything about podcasting. I'd taken a bunch of classes. I'm technologically challenged. As much as I'm on technology, oh Lord have mercy, the hours behind all of that is crazy. But I did not have a great platform regarding the thriller genre, which I knew I really wanted. I was working on this book, so I thought, well, let me get connected with people in the genre, and even if they don't write in the genre, I just want to be immersed in the publishing industry and with other authors. And so if people didn't write in that genre, we talked about the process, we talked about what they wrote. But my listeners tend to be either aspiring authors, they're also the fans of the writers, and also you have established writers who just want to listen to what's happening with other authors, what's new and hip, what does this author have to say behind the scenes, so I'm grateful for that. So I have really been blessed by creating this network of author friends. In fact, the first year after doing this podcast, I attended Killer Nashville, and I had all of these built-in friends, waiting for me. I had never been to the that particular conference before, but I had all these people that I'd interviewed. So so we immediately had a bond, and a lot of those people became repeat guests. So this has opened up lots of doors for me. Now I'm being approached by publicists, and I'm getting to interview all of their clients. One particular PR agency, he opened a door to all of his book clients. So last year I think I had the entire year planned. 3 months into the year, I had my recordings for the whole year. Yeah.
That's an incredible story. And once again, even my own guests, like I said, they have writers here, other podcast hosts, to see the possibility of where it can all go.
Right.
It's an endless universe of possibilities that could happen just doing this process.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, for all this time, what keeps you doing it? You're doing major things. What keeps you turning the mic on? Why do you keep doing this process?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question, because it's a lot of work, right? So what people don't see behind the scenes are all the preparation. To do a good podcast, you got to know your guests. So you have to do research on your guests. You've got to come up with questions for your guests. And even if the questions are, you might have the same kind of questions, you've got to tweak it for each guest. It can't be completely cookie cutter. And then there's a technical part. You've got to make sure your technical equipment is up and running, that you put out a good product that will be pleasing to people who come onto the podcast, and then you want to make sure that listeners want to hear what you have to say. So it's a lot of work, but the payoff is incredible because like I said before, the networking is just invaluable. Now I pay because I've got to pay for equipment, I've got to pay for the app, I pay a graphic artist to come up with the graphic design. I'm not doing that myself. So people will say, well, where's the payoff? The payoff is incredible because of the connections I've made, the opportunities that I've been given, to be approached by a PR person from one of the big five to represent the authors is incredible. And all the free books I get is just so much fun. So much fun. And I'm getting to meet authors whose books are becoming movies, have become movies, I'm watching authors who I've interviewed, their books are now on Netflix. It's just incredible. Incredible payoff in that regard.
Yes, ma'am. I totally agree. I totally agree. So speaking of movies, would you love to see a fifth of a story become a series?
I would love that. In fact, it plays like a movie in my mind, and that's one of the things that I've gotten in terms of comments and input about the book, reviews. People have said, "Oh my gosh, this would make a great movie." Yeah, so I would love I could see this on.
I totally agree. Because like on Amazon Prime, the Jack Ryan series and the Jack Reacher series, things like that. I can see this book kind of sort of being in that vein of those Lee Child books.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Walter Mosley, one of my heroes. He's just the king of the mystery, right? Yeah, look at how his books have made it to film. Mm-hmm.
But the good thing I love as an author is seeing all of these streaming platforms. They're all trying to have their own original content. So more and more authors are getting these movie deals left and right. To all these hundreds of platforms they got out there now. It's definitely open season. Open season.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
Yes. Yes. So, are you in the middle of writing book number 2 to this? I saw that.
So I finished book number 2.
Oh, it's done.
It's done. By the Zeal of Fire. And unless the publisher has me change the title, but it's called by the. And then the next book I'm writing now, the third book in the series, and that's called Every Good Story Ends Well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Unless you go in, publishers will tell you, well, don't get married to the title. It may change. Are so good.
I understand. So we can't spoil anything. Could you give us a little bit of book number 2, like what to expect, a little bit of a sprinkle?
Yeah. So book number 2 delves into Patty Pang's story, and so she is in a fifth of the story. She and Andrew are separated, and it looks like they're on their way to a divorce. But we find out toward the middle of the book that they're actually in the middle of reconciling. So what happens in the book number 2 is I go into Patty's story, and because there's some things she's likable, but there's some things that are a little sketch and a little iffy about her, and so you wonder, is she having affairs? So it goes into her complete backstory. It goes into her, the way she's raised. It goes into her being, African-American woman in a relationship with a white guy, and what that looks like, and how they're treated, those kinds of things. So there's that, but then there's the story about her role in the FBI agency and her being deep undercover, and it talks about, and then it fills in a lot of the holes. And you don't have to read a fifth of the story to read By the Fire of Zeal at all. I write them as they're a series, but they're also standalones. So it goes deep into her story and into the attack against her and her children and her family. So again, one of the things that I'm passionate about is social justice, race reconciliation, and so there's, and also the themes of, you know, who is God and where is He in the details, and so that's all throughout the entire story. So it gives a great view into her world. It's terrifying because I have like a mother. Every mother's worst fear is like in that book. So that was cathartic for me because I got to work through a lot of my worst fears. She goes through most of the book being blind as well, so I had to do a lot of studying about being blind. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So I'm gonna tell you right now, I love reoccurring guests. Whenever that book drops, you are more than welcome to come back to the Sean P. Experience, do some promo. I would love to bring you back onto the show for sure.
That would be wonderful. Yeah.
Do you have any tentative like release dates and pre-order kind of stuff? Any of those things in the making?
I wish. As far as I know, that next book should come out 2025, and I'll make sure that you know, if it can come out earlier, even better. But for now, yeah, with traditional publishing, it looks like it's 2025. Yeah. In the meantime, I am releasing a compilation of devotionals with a team I write with from my blog. It's called Bold Faith. So that will come out this November.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming to the show. Thanks for agreeing to come. I always want to be grateful to my guests every time I get a yes. It's so difficult. You know that being the host. It's difficult
Yeah.
getting the yes sometimes. So I appreciate every yes and coming to the show and just giving us so many nuggets and jewels. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the invite. It's always fun. And I can't wait for you to come back on Murder, Mystery, and Mayhem.
I want to come back. I got some new work for you. I got 3 new projects. So I want to
What?
definitely come back on your, I got 3. We got to talk.
Yeah.
We'll talk. We'll talk.
We'll talk. Okay. And I want you to know that your episodes are some of the most listened to episodes. So kudos to you. Yeah.
Wow,
Yes, sir.
that's crazy. That's hard to believe. Wow. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. So for my people in the chat, I love each and every one of y'all. Y'all consistent. Y'all come through. Y'all always commenting. It fuels us when we're doing this to have the audience, man. So thank y'all for the chat. And I will see y'all on Monday morning at 9 o'clock a.m. I'll be covering the book Rising from the Rails by Larry Ty about the Pullman Porters being the first African American middle class. Thank y'all very much. See y'all Monday morning.